Raising your like sign. The motion passes. Item number 5, public comments from interested citizens. Kristen.
We have many interested citizens, but nobody has signed in.
Okay. All right. Takes us to item number 6, presentation of proclamation declaring April 2024 as National Child Abuse Prevention Month. With that, I have a proclamation of the City of Canyon. Whereas the citizens of Canyon recognize the crucial need for efforts by both individuals and groups to promote awareness of the plight of abused children, to work toward prevention of violence against children and provide services and treatment to these small victims of their families. And whereas Amarillo Area Court-appointed special advocates, AA, CASA, Bridge Children's Advocacy Center, St. Francis, and DFPS advocate for children of abuse and neglect. And whereas Randall County confirmed 199 children suffered from some form of abuse or neglect in 2023. And whereas our society has a responsibility to protect our children and help them thrive in a safe environment, as every child is entitled to be loved, cared for, feel secure, and be free from all types of abuse and neglect. And whereas effective child abuse prevention and intervention programs succeed because of partnerships among a variety of entities, including but not limited to schools, religious organizations, law enforcement agencies, DFPS, the Bridge Children's Advocacy Center, St. Francis, and CASA, court-appointed special advocates, prosecution agencies, medical professionals, mental health professionals, victim advocates, and other community-based nonprofit organizations. Now therefore, we, the mayor and commissioners of the City of Canyon, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2024 as Canyon Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month. And in doing so, urge all citizens and institutions, both public and private, to support Amarillo Area CASA, the Bridge Children's Advocacy Center, St. Francis, and DFPS, as well as other partnership agencies in their efforts to increase awareness of and services for abused and neglected children in our community. Given under our hand and seal of office this first day of April 2024.
Mayor, if I may, we have people from CASA, the Bridge, and St. Francis present.
All right, well, very good. Well, thank you all. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your work, and appreciate what you do for our community and for the children. So.
Yes,
Do
can
we
we
want
take
a
a picture?
picture of everything?
Yes.
Unless you want to. It's okay too. Here, I'll let them.
Yes.
You want to be in the middle? Where don't we?
Hand this to somebody.
I'll take it.
Don't like each other.
Okay, everybody squeeze and we all gotta see each other. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, I'm gonna.
Hold that good feeling. Thank you.
You're nice this time.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you for coming.
All right, anything?
Thank you.
Thank you for all that you do.
Yeah. A little short there, a little.
I don't know what is interested.
Sure wish they could work themselves over to.
All right, item number 7 is conduct public hearing and consider and take appropriate action on an updated future land use map. Lucas?
Absolutely. So the Canyon Comprehensive Plan was adopted in early 2019. At that point, it had a future land use map inside of the plan that was adopted along with the comprehensive plan. Part of the comp plan talks about the need to ensure that the future land use map is updated and accurate. And so that's what we're doing here tonight. I brought an updated future land use map. We're working with Friesen Nichols on a couple other projects right now, so I kind of took advantage of the opportunity while we're already working with them. They've got our file from the comp plan. And so I had them work on this updated map while we're using it for another project currently with them. So I took this to P&Z and we talked about it, and they gave a unanimous recommendation for approval last week. And so I'm bringing it here to you now for consideration and approval. We do need to have a public hearing because it's an amendment to the comprehensive plan. But really what this is it's not regulatory per se, and it's not law. What it is a recommendation that's adopted originally through the comprehensive planning process, now through an update for accuracy. And what the comprehensive plan says is that anytime the City of Canyon adopts zoning regulations in an area that's currently unzoned or an area that's being rezoned, is we need to consider this future land use map and its recommendation and ensure that either the action we take through zoning is in accordance with this map, or that we update this map with that zoning change if it is not in accordance with this map. So what we're doing here tonight is updating this map to reflect a lot of the zoning changes that had already been made over the past 5 years now, since 2019, that were not in accordance with the old future land use map. So we're correcting a lot of those issues. And then we're also providing for some future land use areas that are more accurate based on the discussions we've had both internally and with developers. You will notice there's two areas that are white in the middle of our map here. Those are the two areas that the City of Canyon has removed from our ETJ. So that's accurate as of today. There's an additional area that's been removed from our ETJ as well that I'll work with our mapping parties to remove. If any of these were to come back into our ETJ, I know there's a conversation we're having with one, then we'd bring this map back and say, hey, we're adding this back in. This is the designation we're going to give it on the future land use map. But this map would be accurate as of today. Love to answer any questions.
Why are these areas selected to be used in that way? Why are they those colors?
Yeah, it really depends on what area you're talking about, but in general, we try and use pretty broad stroke terms. So rural residential, low density residential, medium and high density residential, and then we've got a downtown area that's very specific. But the rest of them are very general: retail, light commercial, light industry, public, or parks. And the idea is we feel like this is an appropriate way for the community to grow. So you'll notice the difference between our old map and new map is there used to be larger swaths of commercial on the future land use map along 2590, but now Spring Canyon is actually developed in a different way. And the same thing will be the case, we're talking about a Crestview development right now. Right now that says there's commercial along 2590, but once that's zoned, it probably will only be zoned low density residential, so we'll update the map at that time to reflect that change. So it's really just our best guess of what we think is appropriate for those areas. And then, like I said, it's really a guiding document that we can come back and have a conversation with anytime we need to change it for more specific changes that are made.
And there's logic, but why certain things don't go together?
Yeah, you typically wouldn't put, your industrial right in the middle of a neighborhood or anything like that. There's different ideologies now about mixing commercial and residential, and we're getting more into that generally. But this is based off of our best guesses right now and what we feel like is appropriate in and around Canyon.
So Lucas, you have the blue color signifying my reference for schools, but Spring Canyon Elementary is not blue.
Oh, that's a good catch. Yeah, we can change that for sure. Yeah, we can update that.
I move we adopted an updated future land use map.
We have to go to a
with
public
those-
hearing first.
Oh, okay, let's do it.
Sorry. We'll open the public hearing,
Nobody has signed in, Mayor.
and we will close the public hearing and would entertain that motion there.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and second to approve the updated future land use map. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, then that takes us to item number 8. Consider and take appropriate action on resolution number 08-2024, a resolution of the City Commission of the Kenyon, Texas, supporting the application and acceptance of a U.S. Department of Transportation SS4A grant for planning demonstration and authorizing the Director of Planning and Development to represent the city in all matters pertinent to the administration of the grant. Lucas?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you remember back in December, this body appointed a Vision Zero group, well, actually adopted a Vision Zero resolution. After that, we appointed a group to support that. The original plan for city staff was to go ahead and internally write our document, which is the safety action plan. So that was our goal as a city staff, was we're gonna write our own safety action plan in-house, and then we're gonna go after implementation funds. The reason we had done that is because a lot of communities have gotten these planning and demonstration grants, and quite frankly, we were trying to get ahead of them in applying for implementation and give ourselves a better chance. They came out with the notice of funding opportunity, and they have 3 submission deadlines. We thought we'd be fine to submit in August, which was our original plan, but they said that you can only submit in August for planning and demonstration. So that kind of took that off. What that meant is it really shrunk our timeline, and they said if we wanted to apply for implementation this year, we would have had to have our safety action plan adopted in the month of April. And so we felt like that was really compressing the timeline too much for us to thoroughly go through the safety action plan, to really give citizens a chance to jump in and engage, to give that that advisory group the opportunity to really understand what it was about. So we're kind of flipping the script, and our plan now is to apply for the planning and demonstration grant in April. So that's due later this week. I've got a lot of it written already. Talked with Amarillo, who was funded last year, and got some pointers on their application. So our plan is to go ahead and apply for the planning and demonstration dollars, which will fund the hiring of a consultant for us to work with somebody to write that plan for us. We're also gonna put in a thoroughfare plan, which is what Amarillo did. So we kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone. And then we'll also add a lot of demonstration dollars to that. So we can not only work on the planning side, but we can also try some things and see how we like them. Different crosswalks, if we wanted to try some bollards for a bike lane, if we wanted to try some flashing crosswalks somewhere, that would give us the funds to go ahead and try some of those things through the planning process. So then we can come back in future years as we apply for implementation dollars and say, hey, this really worked. This education program that we demonstrated seemed to slow cars down in this area, things like that. So that's our plan now. The ask from the commission is that if we are funded, that we will be able to budget for the match. And so the match would be $50,000. The full grant amount would be $250,000. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions on that too.
I move to adopt resolution 08-2024.
Second.
You have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 08-2024. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. All right, item number 9, presentation from city engineer updating status of current public works projects.
Well, so we have a whole lot going on, so Joe asked that I come in and give you guys an update on where we're at on a lot of the projects that are currently bid or under construction, and all the upcoming projects that I could remember to add in. There's a lot of them are ideas, so they're not quite there yet, but we'll go through some of these. Currently, the projects that have been bid or are going to start construction soon, there's the textile utility relocation project. That was to remove the utility line under FM 2590 close to Hunsley Hills Boulevard. That project's gone through some changes, some redesign. The contractor's reviewed those changes, and he has given us his numbers, so we should be breaking ground on that soon. That was a project that TxDOT required because they're going to be doing construction at that intersection, and so the water line had to be moved because it was too shallow, and they're putting it in some storm sewer. So that's the history on that job. The other project in that same area is the utility extensions to Meyer Park. That was for a 15-inch sewer line to serve Section 3 property of Meyer Park and any other future development in that area. And that also included 2 water line crossings to get water from the east side of 2590 over to the Meyer Park development. The project area has been staked out, and we're hoping that they break ground here in a week or two. And so they're about ready to go. They were waiting on materials, and that's all come in. So the next project is the Lumberyard water line extension. So that's a water line to cross Highway 87 to serve the Lumberyard property. That was for a 10-inch water line to be bored under the highway, and that's been bid. The contract hasn't started yet because there were some changes to the service tie-in. We worked with Public Works Department to make sure that the landowner got the meters and services they needed, and that we have the facilities that the department here will be able to, go and read the meters properly and have access to them. Because we're going to have a fire line, water meter, irrigation, all that. Now that that's done, that contractor will sign off on that and begin construction. The CDBG grant project, that was for the water lines and sewer lines in town here. They're waiting on materials for that. It'll be about 2 weeks before the pipe and valve show up, and that contractor will be able to start then. So we're waiting on that, and that's the grant project that you guys got funded for, I think, a year ago. So slow moving process, but we got the money, got a bid, and now we're ready to start. The contractor working on that one is also doing the wastewater treatment plant force main replacement. So that's the pressured sewer line that takes the wastewater from the treatment plant over by the Southeast Park all the way to the wastewater treatment plant down on Hicks Road. Previously, big portion of that line was replaced. This will replace the last 2 miles of that line. So, and then you'll be good for another 50 years at least, hopefully a lot more. And so they were waiting on material on that, and they're hoping to break ground in May. And then we have the 2024 seal code, and that's been bid and awarded, and that'll take place hopefully in June, if not July. It should take just a matter of days. So we'll coordinate with Chris and his staff to make sure that everyone's notified before we get a bunch of angry people trying to get out of their driveways, and how it goes every year, but we'll try to make it as smooth as possible. All right, new developments that are going on in your ETJ or in your city limits. Stone Creek Unit 2, which is off of Buffalo Road or Country Club Drive, is under construction. They already constructed Unit 1. They're waiting to close that out and have the city accept it so they can start selling units or selling lots. Unit 2 is under construction. They're going kind of slow. I spoke with the developer this morning, and they're kind of working with their contractor. It's all in their hands. We're just overseeing and working with the city to make sure that those ETJ developments are built to the standards that the ordinance at that time had requested. We have the lofts is still going on. I don't know if they got their temporary certificate of occupancy, did they?
They did get a temporary, and they're close to getting their full seal, I think.
Yeah. So they got a temporary certificate of occupancy because there's still some improvements that need to be done on the construction of 17th Street or Avenue. That road had some issues that we still need to have addressed. But in order to get people moved in and not delay the developer, they have a temporary order so they can continue forward, but they are going to come back and make those changes they need to the road. That way, we don't hold anything up, and eventually, before they get their full, occupancy, we can hold them to that and get those repairs.
They were cutting curb on Saturday, when we were out there Saturday.
But I guess they had already leased some of the units, and so some people were displaced and were in hotels or Airbnbs, and so in order to get them into their housing units, we compromised a little. But in the end, we'll still get the results of the road that we wanted, and they get to move forward. And then the construction for the development at Meyer Park, we're going to have a pre-construction meeting soon, and they're going to start doing their utilities and roads out there. I'm not sure when they're going to start. We just know that recently they do have a contract with their contractor, so we'll be doing a lot of updates to the city Public Works Department staff to make sure that we stay on top of that construction, and that's going to be where our utilities are going to tie in on that previous project for the utility extension. Right. Upcoming projects, we have the water line relocation for I-27. That's a project where TxDOT is requiring us to move our water line. That's a 24-inch transmission line that goes under I-27 that fills the water tower. and then that serves all of Canyon essentially. So same thing, they are redoing the road there and they are putting in storm sewer. So our water line, which was constructed, I believe, in the 80s, is too shallow for their storm sewers. So the plan is to put a new line in, be with enough depth, and then we're also putting in a secondary line because a couple years ago we had a risk and resilience assessment. And one of the big risks is having that one transmission line bring in 2/3 of the water to Canyon and not having a redundant line in case that went down to be able to cross all the way the highway or from the pump station to the tank. This takes care of the crossing of the highway and we don't have to go back in the future when we do that redundant line. And where we're at on that is we're waiting on TxDOT. We've been submitting a standard utility agreement with TxDOT, and what they'll do is they're gonna reimburse the city for the cost of the portion of the line that they are requiring you to have to move. So there is gonna be an expense to it because of the secondary line, and that's gonna be bid out. I don't know if that will be awarded. I guess we'll see when the numbers come in. But the part that does have to move, you'll get, once we get the utility agreement, they'll have a percentage of how much they will cover and reimburse you for. And we have the Main Street grant, that's a downtown revitalization grant. That's for the alley east of the square. So we're looking to put all utilities underground, replace the old utilities like water and sewer under that alley, and then going back and paving it with concrete, making it more pedestrian friendly and a little more, nicer to look at, because then you won't have the overhead power and all the private utilities like internet going overhead. And I guess the goal is to make that we're an area where people can walk, or you have those restaurants if they have a back patio, things like that. So, and that's been funded. We're waiting on, we're gonna have a meeting to see who all the stakeholders are for the private utilities and make sure everybody's good with what we're gonna do and how they're gonna put their utilities in a conduit underground.
Kind of time frame on that, do you think?
I don't know that we even have a contract with the TDA yet. I think the city does. but
It's
we're-
gonna be the fall, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, so we're still preliminary working on the layout and what we're gonna do. But by the time we get a contract after that, then we can go out for bid, so. Well, the majority of the work for the design will come at that point, but right now we're taking care of all the issues that we know we're gonna encounter with the utilities.
And we've personally spoken with 2/3 of the business owners there already. There's still a couple we haven't spoken to, but literally we've been to their shops and talked to them and let them know that this was coming. So they'd be aware of it.
On 28th Street and 11th Avenue, at that intersection, it's a concrete intersection it's kind of cracked and it's worn down pretty bad, and that's a main discharge route for all the runoff that comes off of 23rd Street going east. And so with the money that was left over from the seal coat, we're hoping to use that to reconstruct that intersection and to put in some energy dissipation for the stormwater so that it doesn't erode into that park area. And then I kind of make that intersection there have pedestrian-friendly ramps, because I think there's a walking trail there, so if a lot of people go out there, there's a ramp to easily access the park, whether it be just on foot or someone with a stroller, they can go right up there and get on that walking path. There's works we're in the works right now with future development, looking at planning for future development and utility extension, so that's more of a study that we're doing at the request of the city manager. So we're doing a lot of that, trying to see what the capacities are, and a lot of that ties into what we've talked about before with the pro rata, or just any way to minimize or make sure we have capacity to serve the future. There's a project for lighting the water tower over by WT, and there's a few options on that, but the goal is to add lighting so that we can see the WT logo on that tower and have color changing lights so that it can be controlled by one person or multiple people. And so if there's a football game, something happens, they can change the lights, or if it's Christmas, you want red and green lights, you can do that. And over in Spring Canyon East, behind the Canyon ISD admin building, that's where a lot of the stormwater runoff contributes to 23rd Street that caused that erosion issue on 23rd and Country Club. And so what we looked at is putting a diversion channel to divert the stormwater runoff from going onto the Canyon ISD property, onto 23rd and then south, and divert it back to the spring draw. And that'll eliminate a lot of the stormwater runoff that is causing the big issue further south. There's still other measures to be taken, but some of that we're working with Randall County on their end, and then the city's working on this part of it to mitigate a big portion of it. And a lot of that will be constructed in-house now that you guys have your own motor grader recently purchased.
What'd you say about the 4th Street pump station?
4th Street Pump Station, that was pushed back. I guess the funding got shifted around, so plans are done. We're just waiting until funding is secured, and then we can bid that out. As far as well fields, we have the Nichols well field. That's property the city has owned, has water rights. If you guys need to ever drill or need water, that's a well field that's ready to go. The Section 4 property that the city purchased, there's water rights there, and that's a well field and transmission lines that we've been studying, and that's there for when you guys need the water. And then well 39 is over on the west side over in Spring Canyon. We drilled well 38 a couple years ago. Well 39 is the one to the north. So the plan is to eventually drill 39, connect it with well 38, and take that out towards Section 4 and bring it down to the 4th Street pump station. And that's long-term planning. And then we have had talks about a pavement overlay for Griffin Drive and Lindsay Lane, which is around Crestview Elementary. There's been some pavement failures. We did some bores on the pavement, analyzed the sections, and it looks like the base material was treated to stiffen it up with some either fly ash or lime, and it's caused it kind of reacts like concrete, so it's stiffer, so it started to break, and it's causing those cracks to show through the surface. So we gave some estimates to the Public Works Department about what it would take to rework that base material and repave those roads if they get worse. And then as far as studies go, I've been working with Stephanie to look at the capacity to serve future businesses. So we're studying water and sewer capacities in certain regions to ensure that when she's trying to get a business in, we have the capacity to serve them, and she can speak confidently on that prior to bringing a business in, and then makes that process a whole lot easier. We're working with Public Works Department on construction details and construction specifications. So as the details get updated for what we want for a road cross-section or for manholes, for valves, fire hydrants, things like that, we're updating that in the standard details, and those are all available online. That's what the developers reference. They'll say, well, we're gonna make it to your standard, and they just copy those details. And same with the specifications. So on those specs, anything that's changed since the last time we did it, which I don't know how long ago that was. So any new standards on how you want the construction process to go, that's being updated. So that's a list of the items we've been working on. A lot of them, like I said, are ideas that are just, look at this, look at that, and plan, maybe 20, 30 years down the road. But actively, these are the items that our office is helping with.
Back to the 4th Street, Bo and Joel, we have a plan to fund that, correct?
Yeah,
We were gonna do some bonds.
it'll be included in the next debt issue.
Sorry, I skipped that one, but
It's okay.
so that's the plan. So we were gonna fund it with the ARPA money, but that since has changed, but now you have a shovel-ready job for when you do secure funding, so. You have any questions? You have any more projects? No?
I think that's enough.
Yeah, I think so too for right now. Right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
While we're on projects and public works, Chris, I don't know that we introduced Tanner last, has been introduced.
No, I think maybe he's met most of you by now, but Tanner Devaney's our new assistant director. We're happy to have him. He comes from the city of Amarillo. Some good experience there with their engineering team as project manager, so glad to have him. Hopefully you'll all get to have conversations with him.
Thank you.
Oh, good to have you, Tanner. Thank you.
Trying to get him to speak for me, but he's still a little too nervous, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adolfo. All right, I think that takes us to item number 10, discussion regarding public safety facility improvements and future bond collection. And John, you running with this one?
And I know you and Joe had talked about this, Gary, and we were ready to bring this forward, so where you all want to go with this? You did have a memo in the packet, which you all had seen before, that information Joe had shared with you all before as far as the different scenarios and different amounts. Tonight, we're not really, I don't know that we're looking for a cost. These are all rough estimates. These are not anything that you would hang our hat on and that we could say that's what it's going to cost to do something. They are very rough estimates. We have been moving through the process with the fire department of looking at our current facility and trying to figure out how we were going to shift to our 24-hour shifts and be able to house firemen over there and move into that process. And as you remember, we've talked about the fact that we would probably need to take another bay over there to give us some room. And taking a bay causes us to do a little bit of renovations across the street at Station 2. And while we're talking about that, we thought we would go out and build a large meeting and truck storage facility out at our training site, if you know where that is. You've also heard us talk about that in this plan. The training classroom at the training grounds. While we're there, we thought we would go ahead and rebuild our burn house, which we have not been able to use for the last 5-6 years.
Well, about 4 years when we tore it down.
Okay. That we have not been able to use that. You can only burn something so many times before, even if it is cinder block, before it's not safe to be in that facility. So we're looking at rebuilding that also. Included in this package, as we talk about those things, is the fact that we're going to need a new main engine fire truck, correct, Dennis? It's the main engine that we would need to replace, which is right at $1 million. So we've started looking at all those things and trying to put all that together and see what that looks like and what's the most economical way to do that and the best way to do that. I know at our previously, Gary in a meeting also has discussed the fact that we may want to look at building across the street, and we originally started this process in 2015, looking at building a fire station across the street. We ran into the fact that we did not have the property got increasingly expensive, and that the building of a whole new fire station was very expensive. So now we may look at, one of the things that Gary has suggested, it would be more like a satellite station, a smaller station that would be across the street, and that's where the staff would stay, and that's where some of the first trucks would also be. So that's kind of a new thing to the mix that's not on these scenarios. So we have not asked Sims, architectural firm, to look at that yet. That'll be a simple look for them because Amarillo has built a couple of those type stations over the last few years, and they know about what that looks like. We've actually asked them to look at a similar station over by the football stadium, by our Buffalo Hill bike trails, and they designed something there. I believe it was 4 bays. It was around 11,000 square feet, and that would have housed. And I haven't been in that, Dennis. It would have housed a group of 4. Would have been housed in that.
Correct.
Okay. Over there. So there's a similar model. They'll be able to give us a great exact cost on that because that's only a couple of years old and they just designed one and they won't have to design it again. They'll know exactly what that kind of thing cost. So as
when we talk about that, to me, I'd be interested in that for a couple of reasons. And Chief, I don't know what's ideal, from the fire department standpoint, but now that we have options across the street, we were trying to get that together for, police,
right.
department over there. But now that we have options to consider this, right now the numbers we're throwing out are $6 million for the remodel improvements here to the existing building. That gives us no new space. But I think and I visited with Mayor Stanley, I think he also was going to send, plans to their last 2 stations. But I think those same dollars really is about what they spent on the new fire station that would have the the living quarters for a crew. And I'm not sure whether that's 3 or 4 bays, but he did say, if you needed, 2 crews in there, it'd probably be another $1 million on top of that or so. So I'm not sure what all that looks like, but just bang for the buck, as taxpayer, it feels better to me that, you're getting building new dollars for that. And I also think that's probably an easier sell to taxpayers too, to tell them we're using the dollars for that versus right now we've got right at $10 million. It's really remodel is what we're doing. So I think that's a harder sell than, we need new building with living quarters and a new building. So I'd love to go ahead and
bring
take
you
a
all
look
those
at it.
costs. That's what we're doing right now. They finished looking at what we currently have. Dennis and his staff have gone through there and pencil whipped that again, so we've drawn that. They're working on drawing that. They'll be able to get us a cost, and then we'll get a simple cost for across the street, and we'll get some accurate cost on the training facility, and be able to come back with you all for that. One of the pressing issues that we see as a staff is that we know we're going to have a bond election. We know that the next opportunity for us to have a bond election would be this next November. We also know that we're in a presidential year, and we know that there's going to be some election fatigue over the next few months. You can look at Gretchen has supplied us with some dates that talk about what we would have to do and where we'd have to move if we were going to have a November bond election, or if we were going to move to a May 3rd of 2025. And Gretchen is the expert on all of that, so anything to add on those things other than this?
I don't think it makes a lot of difference anymore on May or November. The voter fatigue is a real thing. City elections for November will always be the last thing on the ballot. So if we're gonna have all the gubernatorial, presidential, school, everything will be at the last. And some people just look at what they want, vote, and move on. And I know all the numbers show a lot of bond elections passed. There's a thing called undervotes, and it's you have 5,000 people vote, but when you get to the city, only 3,500 voted. So that kind of, you can probably attest to that, Robin, if that's real. The bonus is they can no longer straight ticket vote, so they have to go through the ballot. So I don't see that it would be either. The only thing I see that would be better for us is if we went May 3rd, 25, gives Megan more time to advertise and us to work on, letting the community know what's going on and what's needed and really get that information out. I believe CISD may have something on the November ballot that could be in competition with us at that time, so it would be comparable on the ballot. So it's up to you all how fast you want to move on this.
And at your place also is another handout, which are large graph on it, spreadsheet. And that was an original plan we received from Sims that kind of talked about the number of months on planning something. And that was starting in a January and having an election in November. That can always be condensed, but that would be based on the professional services that they had talked to and about the amount of time that it would take to get the information out and do those type of things. So this is a firm that they've worked with before, and I know that we're familiar with. And so that kind of gives you a general idea about how long they suggest to do something. And with all of that said, Bo has been able to, you all asked at our last meeting to come up with the election results. And so I was able to find a site that lists all election results. And we narrowed that down to all the way back to 2020. We excluded all the water districts, all the community colleges. I mean, it was everything that had an election. We took them all out. I took a large spreadsheet to Bo, who is a guru on Excel, I've got to tell you, he loves doing this. As I explained it to him, I could see that his eyes were lighting up and mine were drooping. But he has put it all together, and is there any of this, Bo, that struck you as interesting or you wanted to talk about a little bit?
The fact that there wasn't any that struck out that obvious, yes, May or November, there wasn't any clear evidence showing yes or no for either one. The difference between the two, looking at just for all bond elections, less than 2% difference between whether it carried in a May or November.
Number of voters differed,
Number of voters did differ, yes.
but as far as the outcome of an election, it was
Yes,
pretty much the same.
yes, very little difference.
And you pulled it up specifically for safety, like what we're looking for, correct?
Yes, that second chart. Yeah, there you go. Okay, more elections in November, but as far as percent what carried, look at 89% versus 91%, there's not a great difference there.
And it was interesting because you could see where various cities had more than one election, and it seemed like some of the cities, they didn't care. They'd put them in November and they'd put them in May. But then it was like Frisco where somebody was like, we're all May.
That's right.
There were a couple of cities that said, clearly that was their plan. They didn't ever do one in November. But then other cities would just kind of bounce back and forth from a May to November. And
If I may, that's
Yes.
probably due to cost, because most cities have their general elections in May. So you're paying for 2 elections if you go November.
right. So there's the numbers and the results that you all kind of had asked for, and basically, Bo, we were looking at 90, right at 90% passed on safety
Correct.
each time.
Past few years, that has gone down.
Okay.
Below average carry rate last 3 years. If you look at that May, 21, 59%, 22, 57, 23, 57, versus November of 21, 90%, and then 22, 75%, and then in 23, 71%.
So fairly dramatic down the last few years.
Last
They
few
lined
years.
out very similarly since then COVID hit, and then it's been a significant difference since.
Correct.
Again, we were just trying to spin that, look at that as many different ways as we could, and see what we thought or what you all thought. And so with that, any discussion you all want to have related to May, November, we have a lot of information to get you. November would probably put us all in Sims. It would be difficult. I think we could hit it, but it would be difficult. Standing in the parking lot at Gold Star discussing that, I said, can we get something in May? And they said, we can get it to you in June. I mean, they have other jobs and they have other things that they're working on at this point in time. The May of 2025 seems like forever, but I think that it'll be on top of us before we know it, and would give us plenty of time to talk about it to everybody, do the things we need to do, use the committees that you all have already formed and additional committees with that to build that case. We have looked, I've done some looking, I know others have done some looking at some great videos that have been shot from various cities where it was the fire department, it was the chief, and all he did was explain what he had and what he was saying the city was going to go out for. You know, the city can't go out and sell. All we can do is explain what we're doing and provide the information which allows people to make an educated decision on what they choose to do. So any questions for Bo on those numbers or even the facilities or kind of that plan? We'd be happy to answer those. Gold Star kind of changed a lot of this for us, was a game changer for us. And I think that has enabled us to meet the needs of our police department and maybe municipal court and maybe other departments here down the road. But it didn't solve our fire department space issue.
Any thoughts?
You know, I've been a November guy from the beginning, and I haven't been persuaded against that. I mean, I'm open to discussion on it for sure, but I mean,
You know, with the discussion here too, I lean towards, and maybe me throwing, you know, an X factor out too, I lean towards May too, just to give us plenty of time to get it done right. Otherwise, I'd be good with November, but just feels like we could be on a short fuse and to make our best decisions, so.
And this isn't an action item, just simply an opportunity for you all to discuss that. And let our citizens, the first time for our citizens to hear that discussion and find out what you all are thinking on that.
So what do we feel like the biggest constraints would be if we went in November? What would we be dragging on, do we feel like?
We have to call the election in
July.
July. I don't know that we would, I don't know if we'll have all of the schematics completed by then. We again, the facility, if something's across the street, that's pretty quick. They've got a cost. We know what that, we've seen those. We know what that is. We're almost done down here at the end of the building. We have, the training facility is an economical, it's a barn, with some brick. So it's relatively simple to get a cost for. We already have the design, for the burn house. We've already got that engineered. So there would be some cost estimations, for that. And then it's just giving us ourselves time for people to think about it and put that out in front of them. Could we do it? I believe we can. But I'm not doing all that work either. I can't speak for cities and them being able to keep up with that. That's a question we can go back to them and say, hey, we're leaning this direction. What does that mean to you if that's a direction y'all want to go?
It's CISD publicized that big bond election, and then they had all the pricing in place. Is that correct to say?
God, the committee, I don't remember when we started.
So, I worked on it, I mean, with the committee though, so there was multiple committees trying to decide what to do, so we worked on it 9 months, if I had to guess, but that wasn't the media piece. The media piece really wasn't, maybe 4 or 5 months prior to, maybe 4 months. It was really the media piece, it was more about trying to decide even what we were gonna do.
Right.
Right, so we were at ground zero when we started that, and didn't even know which buildings we would build or not, so.
Kind of where
That
we're
probably
at
took,
now.
that probably took 4, well, but the city already knows where we're headed, so we didn't even know that.
'Cause
We didn't
those
know if we
were-
were building one elementary or if we were gonna have a high school in it, I mean, there were no decisions, it was 0.
And those were monthly meetings.
Those
That was
were,
just once a
right.
month, so that kind of drug that.
Those took a couple of
drug that
months before we got
process
to the
out.
point of, okay, I think this is what we're gonna move on, and then we had to get estimated. Now, we didn't have full drawings or anything like that when we went to bond, we just had estimates.
And that's where will be schematics,
Right.
electronic visuals, those kind of things. We won't get into construction, unless it passes. We don't move to that next step.
Correct.
so you feel like we're right where school district was with 3 to 4 months before the election?
Close. I don't know, I mean, when I look at this layout for like media release, it says really you don't start on it until at least June. it has January up there, but there's really nothing
Right,
in
there's
between
nothing going
January and June.
Correct.
So June is when everything would start for pushing things out, and I would say that's probably about the amount of time we did for, because the problem is if you start putting information out too early, people forget about it and they don't wanna see it anymore, so it's gotta be right in front of them at the moment. And it's gotta be fresh on their mind that it really, they believe in it, so I think that's a piece of it. I think it just kinda depends on where we feel like we're at, what we could get to know where we were. To be specific on what we needed to ask for.
We're almost the same. If you look at where the X's start, like you pointed out, the X's really get started in June.
Right.
And so we're almost there. We can't control that. There would be whether Sims can catch up to us and do that. But we could find that out relatively quickly.
But we don't need Sims to be complete.
Rough estimate.
We need rough
To know what
estimates,
to
which
ask
we're
for,
really
right.
close to now.
Yes, because you need cost before,
August 19th is the current day.
to order the election, okay.
I've already informed the county that we're probably going to have one.
So we're
yes.
good. So
So August 19th would be
that gives
the,
us time.
Before we'd have to have anything solid, as for, to know exactly what we would be asking for.
We can call it anytime between July 25th and August 19th.
so we're talking about the difference between 8 months and 13 months.
You know, a question I'd have too is just, does that give us enough time to fine tune? You know, I've got real questions on, you know, we're talking about $2 to $3 million remodel costs over there at Gold Star. You know, in my mind, I'm thinking, man, you know, is that really number, or, you know, if we work on it, can we get that down to, you know, is 500,000 the reality? And maybe it's not.
Right, again, that's a number we've made up, Gary. That's a placeholder that the city staff has said, we're holding that, because we haven't talked to them about what we want them to do, or what we want to do over there.
You know, I could just see, you know, potential this bond issue could be closer to, you know, in the $10 to $12 million range. If that number, particularly that number, came down to, say, 500,000, so.
And I look at the statistics since COVID, things are different, since COVID, things have changed. And so that concerns me a little bit when you think about November to May. May's busy for people to come out and vote, to be real honestly. I think that's why you see less numbers in May. I don't know. I think that the key for me would be is just making sure we were able to get what we needed moving forward for
That's
November.
really probably mine
And if
too.
we
I
feel
don't
like
care
we
whether-
can, then I feel like November's gonna be our best bet, mainly because that even puts us ahead of the game to be able to continue to start moving on the things that we need to do, knowing that we're already overcrowded, we already need more space, we already need more of what we're at, and that just sets us back more months if we waited. Now, like I said, I think a lot of it depends on a little bit more information possibly too, to see what we can get in a timely manner.
And that's why we wanted to have this, is from you all to see if we need to go back and lean on them and say, here's what we're looking for. You know, can we do that?
And there's a small potential that could be the only thing on the ballot.
Your election will be on there.
Right, that's what I'm saying, there's
Us, just
a
commission,
small
yeah.
potential that would be the
City
only
and
thing on the
commission.
ballot.
Right.
And if that's I'm always gonna
You'll have a
trust,
school, well, yeah, you'll have a school board election in 25.
Yeah.
You'll have four. Which, in today's atmosphere, I don't know how close it is.
And I could make something up and say, I would say that in a May, you have people that are for something or against something that probably come to vote.
Mhm.
That there's probably not a middle crowd that comes to vote. In a November thing, I got a lot of things to vote for. I want to make sure I vote for this, so I show up. So I'm probably have that middle crowd that would show up. And that's who you're talking about, Gary, to make sure that we get those people the information so that hopefully there's
I can look at the last bond election was in November.
The cap. I can't remember.
I'll look at, if it was in November, I'll look at the ballot results and see how many actually voted
I kind of think it was November because we started construction.
that spring.
Immediately, yes, you're right, I believe, I don't.
So I can look at the election results and see how many voted. For us, I believe it was a relatively low turnout, but can't be as low as my charter amendment. It was 98
No.
people voted for it, so.
Lois Rice is right, it can't be. So anything else we could answer about that, or?
Because of their being quiet.
It seems quiet over here.
Are you saying that we're loud?
Of course not.
You know, I think I don't care as much. My biggest concern is we do as good a job for the taxpayers with what facilities we need. And then also on cost, you know, if there's some digging in there too, you know, it's like, so, I mean, that's my biggest concern.
Well, would you like staff to turn to Sims and talk to Sheila and John and say, if we're considering a November, can you get us there? Can you get done what we need to have done? And it's a November election, but that's an August 19th
It's a
day.
deadline right there.
that- So we need a commitment. I need enough information, we need enough information to provide to you all so you can make a good decision on that, on whether we move forward or not. So you want me to ask about November and?
I think so, from my point of view.
I would like to know kind of where
Okay.
they are and if they could get with us with negotiations back and forth on cost. I mean, so give
Yes.
some time in that.
Yes,
but
okay.
I'd like to do that.
You know, a question for our staff too, do we already know, exactly on municipal court, how many square feet or where walls, or is that still part of the process?
At this point in
too?
time, Gary, more than likely, we would not be able to move municipal court to start with. I don't know, you say $500,000 and I see a new roof, and that's
True,
all.
so,
You
okay,
just
maybe it's
spent your
$1 million.
$500,000, so municipal court's not moving in, at that point in time. Now, if we come back and say it's, $1.5 million, well, what do we need to do? Is it just one wall and multiple offices in it? The space is there without a doubt, we all know that. It's just how does that fit and how do we make that work?
Well, and also the lease doesn't expire until May 31, 27.
Thank you.
I mean, there are some improvements that have to be engineered and mapped out by the
Oh, right,
architect.
without a doubt.
Judge Cates will have some input on that, but, we looked at the lease expiration date on our current facility. It's May 31 of 27.
And also the lease on the Gold Star ends when, Chuck?
November 30th of 24. So no improvements will be started until then.
Which is logical, because if there's a November election, then that all
Freeze it.
plays out.
Right.
I don't know if this is relative to the date or not, but a piece we've talked about in our building improvements in the past is the possibility of having Mike Wardis come in, just.
And we've spoken to him, we want to include
consultant
him, and I
to
told Sims the other day that we wanted to include Mike in our process.
Just helping think through even needs and what makes sense on some things. And I think, bottom line, I think it could save us some dollars. I think he could do a good job thinking some things through. So,
And I've asked him that just last week and discussed that with him. So we would need to work that with you all, but he's open to that.
all right, well, so have direction and we'll run some traps in.
Yes, and so my commitment is that we will find out about November, and we will also make sure we include across the street with some kind of estimate for across the street. Anything
Chief,
else?
is it fair to ask, is that something that the, if it was built right, that would make sense in the mix, or what?
Logistically, I'd be operating out of 3 different buildings.
Okay.
Because I'll still have to have some trucks over here, and I'll still have to have our other facility with different trucks. It all depends on the response time.
So I would assume that's more complicated.
Yes, sir.
So what would you prefer? What do you prefer? What would be the best option? If it could happen?
Whatever.
Go for it. I'm giving you the floor.
2 fire stations.
Well.
Response time wise, it's best to house your people in the station where the trucks are coming out of. We're dealing with in the city limits for ISO and NFPA, 5 minutes and 20 seconds from the time we get the alarm to we're out, or on scene. Then within that, you have your turnout time. Turnout times from the time you receive the alarm until you're suited up, ready to go. EMS calls is a 60-second time limit, and fire calls are 80 seconds. That's what we're shooting for.
So, Chief, you're saying 3 buildings, but if that one were built large enough, I mean, is it still possible to have it to where you'd have this building and that building then? So,
I would have to look at what we're talking about. That's,
Like the satellite stations they have in Amarillo, that's what you roll out every time we have a fire call. You roll those same trucks out.
yes, but I'm also dealing with rural fire protection here in Canyon, and that's a different response than city trucks.
Okay? Even if we just remodel and stay here, would you have the trucks you need for urban and rural all in the same
To
place?
an extent, other than grass fires.
Okay.
Grass trucks would be at the other building. That's known as Station 2.
Right. But if we went across the street, you might place your urban across the street, because that's where I'm sleeping and that's where I can get up and get the fastest, versus the rural across the street. I'm getting real in the weeds.
Sure. It all depends on what alarm comes in. Is it a rural structure fire? Is it a city structure fire?
Gotcha, thank you. But we can get there, we'll get those costs. And what I'd like to do is just have all those costs and have those ideas and lay them out for you all and let you all move those around, and of course, listen to the professionals, and then you all make a decision on how you wanna play those cards.
I think probably the thing that they're getting hung up on a little bit is when they think of sleeping quarters, they're thinking that people are gonna be in that building, they're not thinking about what happens during the day. And so during the day, you're not gonna be rotating vehicles back and forth because, well, now there's somebody sleeping over there, so I need an urban fire truck and a rural fire truck over there and a bay over there.
And where are my crews working at that time?
Yeah, and during,
Doing maintenance.
at night that makes sense, but during the day, now they're having to cross the street to go get, we're not gonna ever have the right equipment in the right bay, ever,
Awesome.
except on accident in the middle of the night. Is that?
No, you're correct.
And the reason why Amarillo can do it is because
They're set up for
they're
city
fighting one
response.
thing.
Right,
Yeah.
there is
I mean-
no grass truck at that
Yeah,
satellite
nobody's
station.
calling that satellite station to help the rural fire.
Well, even if they do, they run a city pumper out that is somewhat complex in getting it set up, ready for drafting off of our water supply truck.
So
big
they're,
tankers.
Yeah.
they can't do anything on their own.
They're used to dropping lines and hooking to hydrants.
And I didn't really understand that too. It makes sense to me, I agree with Gary, it makes sense to me, like, let's spend that amount of money, let's put a building up. The fact that a person has to cross the street doesn't really bother me, to be real honest with you. But the fact that equipment is never gonna be in the right spot.
I'd like to dig into it, see if it makes sense. I mean, I do, I think that makes sense for the voters, gonna look at that a whole lot better, that we're building this new fire station to take care of our future needs versus a $6 million remodel of the same space. So, if there's something that we could work with that made sense, and I think that could be good for the city and the fire department too. I mean, obviously, we've got more bays, more space, so.
We'll bring it.
Okay. All right, any other questions? And we'll run some traps there, so. All right, then that takes us to item number 11, an executive session pursuant to 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.087 regarding economic development, and 551.072 deliberation regarding real property. And with that,
543, Mayor.
543, we will adjourn into exec session.
Did you get all that?